I never thought my own daughter's laughter would be the thing that broke me. It was nearly 9 p.m. when my sister Joan sent the video. Just a short clip from a dinner party, she said. Watch this, followed by a row of broken heart emojis. I thought maybe she'd captured someone dancing badly or a toast gone sideways. Instead, I saw Madison, my Madison, tucked between two women I didn't recognize, wine glass in hand, her head tossed back like joy was effortless. Then she said it. My mother makes me sick. I wish she'd just disappear. The camera wobbled a little as one of the women choked on her drink from laughing too hard. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. The video ended, and my TV was still playing softly in the background, some home renovation show flickering away. But everything inside me had gone still. Disappear. She didn't scream it in anger. She didn't cry it in frustration. She joked about it, said it like a quip, like a favorite punchline, like something she'd said a dozen times before when I wasn't around. And they all laughed. The worst part wasn't even the words. It was that sound afterward. The kind of laughter that only happens when everyone in the room already agrees with the sentiment. I was the ghost in the story, and they were already speaking of me like I was gone. I sat there in my old robe, the same one I'd had since George passed, clutching my tea like it was some kind of anchor. My hands had started to shake, though the rest of me felt frozen, like a mannequin dressed in grief. At first, I tried to explain it away. Maybe she'd had too much wine. Maybe they were talking about someone else. Maybe it was taken out of context. But the look on her face, it was too easy, too practiced. Like this was normal. Like this wasn't the first time. I didn't even notice the tea spilling onto the carpet. Only when the mug tipped out of my hand completely and rolled under the coffee table did I realize I'd gone numb. My own daughter. The same girl I stayed up with when she had her night terrors. The same one I walked to school every day until she begged me to stop because the other kids said it was weird. The one who cried in my arms when her college boyfriend broke up with her and said, "Mom, you're the only person who's always there." Was that all a lie, too? Or had something changed? I stood, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't sit in that chair one more second. I walked to the kitchen, then back to the hallway, then stood in the doorway of her childhood room. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The video sat like a stone in my gut. Too heavy to move, too sharp to ignore. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the shadows of the ceiling fan carving lines above me like tally marks. Except I wasn't counting time. I was counting damage. I played the video again and again. Sometimes with sound, sometimes on mute. It didn't matter. The betrayal rang out either way. I clutched the pillow tighter. My knuckles ached from it. Don't jump to conclusions, I whispered into the dark. You don't know the whole story, but I did. I just spent too long pretending not to. Lately, every visit felt like I was intruding. Madison would scroll on her phone during dinner, barely hiding her impatience. I'd be mid-sentence, and she'd let out the sigh. Small but pointed. Or she'd glance at her watch like I was taking up time she couldn't afford to waste. Always in a rush. Always busy. Always next time. And I clung to excuses like they were lifelines. She's just tired. Work is stressful. She'll come around. But now I wasn't so sure I even wanted her to. I thought about last month when I offered to help with her car payment. She barely looked up, just nodded and said, "Cool. Thanks." Like it was expected, like I was a transaction, not a mother. That little thank you text afterward, 3 words, and a red heart emoji. That was the extent of her gratitude. I remembered sitting there on the couch rereading it, wondering if I was overreacting, wondering why a part of me still felt like I'd done something wrong. But tonight, no wondering, no questioning, just silence and the quiet collapse of something I'd been trying to hold together with excuses. At some point around 2 a.m., I got up and walked barefoot to the kitchen. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't want to see my reflection in the window. I stood at the sink, gripping the counter, heart pounding like I'd just run a race, but all I'd done was accept something I never wanted to believe. Madison didn't respect me. She tolerated me when it suited her, when it paid off. I was useful until I wasn't. I opened the fridge and stared at the rows of containers, Leftovers from the last time she came over. Half a casserole. She said she was too full to take. A bottle of that overpriced sparkling water she liked but never finished. I shut the door harder than I meant to. The sound cracked the silence like thunder. Back in bed, I wrapped myself in my grandmother's old quilt, the one Madison used to snuggle under as a child. I pulled it up to my chin and wished I could disappear just long enough to figure out how much of me was left under all the pieces she'd chipped away. Madison had laughed. She laughed when she said she wished I'd disappear. But I wouldn't disappear. Not now. Not like this. Church used to be a place that quieted my thoughts. The hymns, the stained glass, the feel of worn wood beneath my palms, all of it used to remind me I was part of something steady. But that Sunday, the pew felt colder. People smiled at me the same way they always did. Too warm, too fast, like they were covering something. After the service, I lingered near the vestibule, waiting for Joan to catch up. She was still inside chatting with the pastor, her voice carrying in little bursts of laughter. I stepped toward the coffee urn. That's when I heard it. Two women I knew from the altar guild standing near the bulletin board. She doesn't even know, does she? Nope. I heard they've been planning it for months, waiting until everything's in place. They were laughing like whatever secret they were in on made them feel important. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Not until one of them said, that daughter of hers drives by like she owns the place. Parks in front sometimes when she's not even visiting. Ballsy, if you ask me. My hand froze on the car door. I didn't know the women, but I knew that tone. Gossip laced with pity. They weren't talking about just anyone. They were talking about me. I stayed still, half crouched beside the door, pretending to look for something in my bag. My heart beat hard in my throat. I didn't know what planning it meant, but I knew it wasn't good. She probably thinks Madison's just too busy to visit. Poor thing. The other one scoffed. Busy redecorating, maybe. Did you see the Instagram post? She called it their future nursery, like it was already hers. A chill spread through my chest, like slow poison. I had seen that post. I hadn't understood what it meant at the time. Just a vague shot of the living room, soft lighting, that same insufferable acoustic music Madison always adds. I thought maybe it was a memory, something sentimental. But these women, strangers, thought my home wasn't mine anymore. I stood up too fast and had to grip the door handle for balance. They didn't see me. They were too busy laughing. I got in the car and locked the doors. My hands shook as I started the ignition. I didn't go inside the store. I couldn't. I just sat there staring at the steering wheel while pieces rearranged themselves in my head. Madison's car parked in front of the house when she wasn't visiting. I had noticed that. I thought maybe she was stopping by when I was out or just using the street to avoid parking tickets in her own neighborhood. But what if she was meeting someone, showing the place, making plans? I hated the feeling creeping over me. Suspicion. It made me feel small, old, like I was losing grip, but I wasn't imagining things. Not anymore. I pulled out my phone, opened Madison's Instagram, scrolled further back. There, a post I'd missed. A photo from my balcony. My plants, my view. The caption, manifesting peace. Soon this will all be ours. Comments full of hearts. Fire emojis. One from someone I didn't know. GH goals. How did you get her to agree? Madison's reply, LOL. It's all in the approach. My vision blurred. She'd already spoken about it as if the deal was done. But she hadn't asked. She hadn't even spoken to me about it because she didn't have to. She thought I'd just accept it, smile through it, fade out quietly like some old curtain no one wants, but doesn't have the heart to throw away. I drove home without touching the groceries. I sat in the driveway longer than I should have, staring up at my windows and wondering when they had stopped seeing me as a person. Was it gradual? Or had I just missed the moment it turned? That night, I closed every curtain. I turned off every light, and for the first time in a long while, I locked my bedroom door from the inside. Not because I was scared, but because I was awake now. I used to think the library was for checking out cookbooks I'd never use or attending lectures where someone explained how to prune hydrangeas with just the right amount of cruelty. But today, I sat in front of an old desktop monitor with fluorescent lights buzzing above me like a second heartbeat. I didn't trust doing this at home. My Wi-Fi had been spotty ever since Madison's last visit. She said she'd streamlined my settings. Back then, I'd smiled and said thank you. Now, I wasn't so sure what she'd actually changed. I opened a private browser window. I didn't even know what that meant last week, but I'd Googled how to make sure your searches didn't leave a trace. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being cautious. And I was done being blind. I typed in her name first. Madison Bright. There she was. Profile picture perfect. Smiling with teeth she hadn't had before I paid for Invisalign in her 20s. Her page was public. I scrolled photo after photo, dinners out, manicures, weekend trips. One was a luxury spa tagged in Soma. I stared at it. That trip had been the same week. She'd canceled lunch with me. She said she was struggling financially. I remember feeling guilty for even asking. I Venmo'd her $200 that night to help with groceries. She heart-reacted it. I clicked through her friends' pages. In one of them, she's tagged in a post at a boutique opening. The caption read, "Can't believe how fast your renovation is coming along, girl." A comment under it said, "Love that you're making it yours already." Every time I saw that word, my stomach tightened. It wasn't just one lie. It was dozens scattered like breadcrumbs in the mouths of strangers. Madison had been crafting a story, and I was the only one who hadn't read the script. I searched her husband's name next, Alec Waters. Most of his posts were private, but one jumped out, a video from inside my living room, him doing a goofy dance in front of my fireplace, Madison giggling off camera. The caption read, "Got to enjoy it before the baby makes us boring." Before the baby, before my place became theirs. I leaned back and let the shame roll over me. Because this wasn't sudden. I hadn't been blindsided. I'd been asleep with my eyes open. All those excuses, all those busy weeks and tight months. Meanwhile, she was planning her new life inside my home. I clicked out of the browser and just sat there, hands folded on the desk like I was in trouble. The librarian at the front desk gave me a polite nod when I stood to leave. She didn't know I was walking out with a completely different version of my life in my pocket. Outside, the sun was too bright. I stood in the parking lot with my purse clutched tight and nowhere to go. Everything felt unfamiliar, even my own name. That night, I didn't call Madison. I didn't text Joan. I didn't cry. Instead, I sat at my desk with a notepad. I wrote down every date Madison had canceled plans, every time she'd mentioned needing money. Then, next to it, I jotted down anything I'd seen online that lined up: trips, events, purchases. By the end of the hour, I had a pattern. Not a coincidence, not a miscommunication. A pattern, the kind you don't make by accident. The kind you build on purpose. That night, I put the kettle on and stood by the window while it boiled. The lights were off in the apartment across the way. I could see my own reflection in the glass. Older than I felt, but sharper, too. She thinks I won't do anything. She thinks I'll let it happen. But I've been underestimated before. This time they'll regret it. The shears felt heavier than they used to, or maybe I was just holding them tighter. My garden had always been where I went to breathe, to calm the noise. But this morning, even the birds sounded distant. I knelt by the rose bush George planted the year Madison turned 8. She'd named it Princess, swearing she'd take care of it herself. She forgot, of course. I tended it like I did everything else. Quietly, consistently, without asking for thanks. Now I stared down at the tangled mess of thorns, brown edges curling in. A few blooms still clung on, trying to look hopeful, but I saw the truth. It needed cutting back hard. I positioned the blades just above a dead stem and snipped. Snip. A lie about being broke. Snip. A canceled visit followed by a spa photo. Snip. Manifesting peace in my home. Each cut cleared more space. Each cut made the plant smaller but stronger. I don't know how long I worked. By the time I looked up, sweat was dripping down my spine, and my hands were covered in dirt. But the bush looked better, less confused, more itself. And for the first time in days, so did I. I stood up slowly, knees stiff. My reflection flashed in the kitchen window as I reached for the garden hose. Face flushed, hair pulled back, eyes clear. I didn't look like someone fading into the background. I looked like someone waking up. I leaned against the porch railing, the hose still running beside me. What was I waiting for, really? For Madison to explain herself? To apologize? To cry and promise it wasn't what it looked like? It was what it looked like. And I had proof now. Dates, screenshots, inconsistencies. But it wasn't just the lies that gutted me. It was how easy they came to her, how easily I'd swallowed them. The thing about being a mother is your instincts don't go away even when you want them to. You still want to protect, to understand, to forgive. But what happens when that instinct becomes your own noose? I picked up the garden gloves and set them on the table. I stared at them for a long time. I had spent my entire life building safety nets for Madison. She'd never seen a cliff, she feared, because I was always at the bottom with open arms. But now she wasn't climbing anymore. She was pushing, and I had to stop catching her. Inside, the house was still, the air cool, faintly smelling of lemon cleaner and lavender sachets. I glanced around the living room, my living room, the same couch where George used to read the paper, the window where I'd watched Madison take her first steps in the yard. She wanted to rip all of that out, redecorate, strip the walls of my life, and paint over it in neutrals she'd found on Pinterest. She hadn't just taken me for granted. She'd planned her life around my silence. And now it was time I broke it. I went to the drawer by the phone and pulled out an old business card. Mr. Landry. I hadn't called him in years, not since George's estate paperwork. But I still remembered his calm voice, the way he explained everything twice just in case I was too proud to ask again. I dialed the number. Landry and Associates, how can I help you? Yes, I said steadily. I need to make an appointment. It's about power of attorney and financial access. I think something's been done behind my back. The receptionist took down my name and asked if I preferred phone or in person. In person, I said. I want it on the record. When I hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief either. Just clean like after a deep cut. When the bleeding finally stops, I stood in the hallway for a long moment and whispered to the quiet house, I'm not going to disappear. The office hadn't changed much. It still smelled like leather and lemon oil. Same oversized mahogany desk, same framed certificates, and dusty books with titles that made my stomach tighten. Elder law, property transfer liability, probate defense. Mr. Landry stood when I walked in. Elaine, he said warmly, like I was an old friend. Not a problem walking through the door. It's been a while. I nodded, clutching my purse like it could keep me grounded. I think my daughter's done something I didn't authorize, I said, skipping the pleasantries. And I need to know how bad it is. His expression changed, that quick shift from polite to professional. Let's sit down. Start from the beginning. I handed him the manila folder I'd been carrying like it was radioactive. Printouts from my online digging, screenshots, the Instagram post, the spa trip photo. But what mattered more were the questions I hadn't been able to answer. How had Madison gotten so confident, so entitled? He flipped through the pages slowly. You're saying she's treating the apartment as if it's already hers? She is, I said, voice flat. And worse, she's got strangers believing it, too. There's a video, a post, a comment thread from someone asking how she got me to agree. I didn't. I never agreed to anything. He raised an eyebrow. And yet, she's speaking as if you have. I nodded, which made me remember something from a hospital stay a while back. I had pneumonia. She had me sign some papers to help with insurance. I looked him in the eye. I didn't read them. I trusted her, but I think one of them was about power of attorney. His face didn't react, but his hand moved faster. He typed something into his computer, then turned the screen toward me. We processed a document 6 months ago. Limited durable power of attorney granted to Madison Bright. Witnessed and notarized, brought in person by her daughter. I leaned in. My name was there. My address, my signature, but the curve of the L in Elaine was off. It wasn't mine. Not quite. She forged it, I said, the words tasting like rust. That's not my signature. He sat back, steepling his fingers. Are you absolutely certain? I signed a lot of things that week, I said. But no, I didn't sign anything giving her financial control. He hesitated, then reached into his filing cabinet and pulled out the original copy. Take a look at this. It was filed with full authority over retirement accounts, real estate, and legal communication. I stared at it like it might burst into flames. And she's already used it, he added, voice lower now. Your retirement fund has been accessed. Multiple withdrawals over the last 4 months. The address on file for statements was changed to her residence. My stomach turned. How much? I asked, already bracing for it. He glanced at the monitor again. Over $38,000, all marked as personal expenses, withdrawn in even chunks, just under the reporting threshold. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there. Because when someone takes your trust, you lose oxygen. But when they take your security, that's when you stop breathing. She was preparing, I whispered. She wasn't just talking about moving in. She was using my money to fund it. He nodded solemnly. And legally, with this form still active, she has the authority to do it. If it holds up. I looked up. What do you mean if? If the signature is forged, we can challenge it, he said. But we'll need a forensic document examiner. And you'll need to move fast. If she files for a transfer of ownership or tries to sell anything in your name, it'll be harder to unwind. I didn't think. I didn't blink. I want to start immediately. He opened a drawer and handed me a contact. This man is the best. Schedule an appointment today. Bring samples of your known signatures. We'll need to prove it's not you. I nodded, stood up, but hesitated before leaving. She's my daughter, I said softly. I know, he said. But today, treat her like a stranger. The floor of the bank felt colder than I remembered. Or maybe it was me standing too still, holding a folder against my chest, like it might stop my ribs from cracking open. The manager's name tag read Angela, and her eyes flicked from my face to the manila envelope in my arms like she already knew this wasn't a routine visit. I need to speak with someone about account access, I said, my voice calm. There's been unauthorized activity under my name. It involves power of attorney. Her professional smile faltered. Do you have documentation? I nodded. I have everything. She led me into a glass-walled room just off the lobby. A few chairs, a cheap desk, and a printer that kept sighing like it was tired of hearing bad news. I sat down and handed her the folder. Angela flipped through it in silence. When she reached the forged power of attorney document, her brows pinched. This was processed here, she said slowly. It was brought in by your daughter, Madison Bright. Yes, I said. That's her signature. The other one is supposed to be mine. I never signed it. I never gave her that authority. She kept nodding like each sentence cut deeper. The document appears to be notarized by a third party. We accepted it as valid at the time, but I see now why that may have been a mistake. I leaned forward. Has she made withdrawals? Angela clicked through her screen. Yes, she said. Multiple from both your retirement and checking accounts, all authorized under the POA. She also changed your mailing preferences, statements, notices, all going to her address. My mouth went dry. She hadn't just lied. She'd locked me out of my own life. I want copies of every transaction, I said. Every authorization, every time she signed my name or moved money. Angela hesitated. Technically, under the power of attorney, it's being challenged, I interrupted. I have legal counsel. A forensic expert is reviewing the signature. This is fraud. You can either help me now or be named in the report later. Her face stiffened, but she nodded. Understood. I'll need a moment. She left the room. I sat there gripping the arms of the chair, feeling the weight of every minute I hadn't acted. Every time I'd let her tell me I was being too sensitive, that she had it under control, that I was lucky she was handling things. Madison didn't handle anything. She took. Angela returned 20 minutes later with a stack of printouts. She slid them across the desk. I scanned the pages. Withdrawals every few weeks. Always neat numbers. $950, $1,200, $975. Almost like she'd rehearsed it. Every transaction aligned perfectly with the weeks. She told me she couldn't afford gas to visit, couldn't pay the phone bill, couldn't afford groceries. There were no grocery store charges, no gas stations, no utilities. But there was a charge for a prenatal yoga class, a down payment to a boutique baby furniture store, a hold from a luxury hotel in Santa Barbara. She was nesting in a nest she built from my money. Angela slid one last paper across the table. This is the notary record. The person who notarized the document isn't affiliated with our bank. It was accepted as a walk-in validation. I stared at the notary's name. Something about it rang familiar, but not from my life. From Madison's. I pocketed the paper. "Thank you," I said. My voice was too calm to be kind. "You'll be hearing from my attorney." Angela stood. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Bright."
I really am.
I nodded and left the room. The sun outside should have felt warm. It didn't. I walked to the car, slid into the driver's seat, and stared at the dashboard.
I didn't cry.
I didn't scream. I just breathed because now I had evidence. Now I had a trail. And now Madison couldn't lie her way out. The coffee shop was across the street from the courthouse, tiny, tucked between a consignment store and a bail bonds place. I sat near the window, files spread out before me like I was preparing for trial. Because, in a way, I was. The receipts, the notarized form, the bank statement, each one a small cut that added up to something I could no longer hide from. The barista brought me a cup of black coffee, no cream, no sugar. My stomach wouldn't have tolerated anything sweet. I took out a highlighter and started marking things, dates, amounts, notes Madison had left in texts. I hadn't responded to her in days. But I'd kept every message, every "sorry for the short notice, Mom," and "can you help just this once?" Each text now read like foreshadowing, like setups in a story where I was never meant to be the main character. Just the mark. Halfway through the bank statements, I saw it again. $2,400 charged to Harmony Ridge Wellness Center. That was the weekend Madison claimed she had the flu, canceled our brunch, said she'd been too weak to drive. I remember feeling guilty for even suggesting we meet. I dropped off soup at her door, left it in a thermos. She never even texted me to say thank you. She wasn't sick. She was at a spa I didn't know existed on my dime. I circled it 3 times. My phone buzzed on the table. "Joan," I answered.
Hey.
Her voice was soft but tight. "You okay?" "No," I said, "but I'm awake." "I've been thinking about the video," she said. "And all those times Madison showed up late, distracted. I always thought she was just overwhelmed, but now it looks like she was buying time." "She wasn't overwhelmed," I said, staring out the window. "She was getting ahead of me." I told Joan everything. The forged document, the bank transfers, the new mailing address, the false notary. By the time I finished, she was silent. "Then, Elaine, this is theft. This isn't just a spat. This is criminal." "I know. Have you spoken to a document examiner yet?" I glanced at the file in my purse. "Landry gave me someone. I'm going today."
Good, she said.
"And Elaine?"
Yeah.
"I think it's time you stop playing defense." I let the silence sit between us. I had spent my whole life putting Madison first, making excuses, taking the blame, absorbing the silence. But Joan was right. I didn't need to protect Madison from consequences she chased. I finished the coffee cold, bitter, just like the reality I was finally swallowing. That afternoon, I drove to a UPS store and printed every file from the bank, every email, every message. I bought a portable file box and labeled each folder by hand. Bank activity, power of attorney, forged social media evidence, texts. I slid the box under the passenger seat. I wasn't building a case. I was building a wall. Between me and her, between who I had been and who I would not be again. That night, Joan came over. She brought a frozen lasagna and 2 bottles of wine. We didn't open either. We sat at the kitchen table, and I walked her through every page. Halfway through the second folder, she looked up at me. "Do you want me to be your legal representative?" I blinked.
What?
"I mean it. If you revoke Madison's power of attorney, you'll need someone else listed. Someone you trust. It doesn't have to be me, but it damn sure shouldn't be her." I stared at her for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, I want that." Joan reached across the table and took my hand. She doesn't get to rewrite your life. No, I said quietly. Not anymore. The office was tucked behind an insurance agency. The kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking. No sign out front, just a name on the buzzer. Grayson Forensic Services. The kind of man who doesn't need walk-ins, only referrals. Mr. Grayson looked like a man who hadn't wasted a second in 40 years. Trim white beard, sleeves rolled up, no small talk. I liked him immediately. He slid a sheet of lined paper across the desk. Write your name 10 times, he said. Then write it again, with different pens. Blue ink, black ink, then ballpoint. My hands trembled slightly as I wrote. Not from fear, just from rage, still coiled too tight in my chest. When I finished, he pulled out the power of attorney form Madison had submitted. The one with the wrong L in my name, the one that made my stomach turn every time I looked at it. He placed it side by side with my samples and leaned in, eyes narrowing behind thick lenses. Then he reached for a ruler, began measuring the slant of the loops, the spacing between letters, the way my pen lifted between strokes. Was this notarized in person? He asked. Yes, I said. By someone Madison knows. Not me, he hummed. A sound of recognition, not surprise. I sat there, hands folded in my lap, staring at the tips of my shoes. I thought of Madison that night after George's funeral, sitting beside me on the couch, holding my hand like she'd never let it go. I had believed every tear. Now, I believed this. Grayson sat back. This isn't your signature, he said plainly. No hesitation marks, different baseline pattern, slant angles off by 5 degrees. This was either forged by someone who had a sample or traced from a document. He looked up. I've seen enough of these to know. This wouldn't survive a court challenge. My throat tightened. I swallowed once. Can you put that in writing? I already started, he said, motioning toward a printed sheet on his desk. Do you want a full affidavit or a summary analysis for now? Both, I said. If I have to burn this thing to the ground, I want every match ready. He nodded, typed something into his computer. While he worked, I wandered to a framed photo on the shelf behind him. His daughter, I assumed.
A wedding portrait, bricht smile, familiar.
I froze. Madison stood in the background, hair longer, but unmistakably her, laughing, champagne in hand. I turned back to him. That's your daughter? He glanced up. Yeah. Madison was her roommate in college. They've stayed close. Haven't seen her much lately, though. She used to stop by every few months. Every few months. That's when the statement stopped arriving at my house. When my Wi-Fi password was updated. When my spare key mysteriously ended up back in Madison's hands. She brought you the document? I asked, already knowing the answer.
She did, he said.
Said you had pneumonia, and asked her to take care of paperwork. Not uncommon. Families trust each other. I nodded once. Did she say she had your consent? She said it was already signed. I just notarized it based on what she brought in. Then his face shifted, concern creeping into his eyes. Elaine, I didn't verify your ID. I didn't see you. That's on me. No, I said, my voice like gravel. That's on her. He handed me the printed affidavit. Take this to your lawyer. If needed, I'll testify. I tucked it into my folder and stood. Thank you. He followed me to the door, pausing before he opened it. I wish I could say this is rare, but it's not. I'm starting to understand that, I said. Then I looked him in the eye. She didn't just forge my name. She erased me, and now I get to write myself back in. He gave a solemn nod. Take care of yourself. As I stepped into the sunlight, I felt it for the first time in days. Clarity. The anger was no longer a storm. It was a weapon, and I was finally ready to use it. The pen didn't feel heavy. It felt righteous. I sat at the dining table with Mr. Landry across from me, Joan to my left. Every document laid out with precision. Each page a quiet revolution. This revokes the previous power of attorney, Mr. Landry said, sliding the form toward me. It grants full legal authority to Joan Brightheit, your sister. Effective immediately. I nodded.
No hesitation.
Not this time. I signed. Just like that, Madison was legally cut out of the decision-making she'd stolen. No more pretending she helped me. No more speaking for me behind my back. Landry pushed the next document forward. This is the new will. Do you want to read it line by line? I already have, I said. 3 times. Still, he paused. Are you sure you want to remove Madison entirely? Even if she contests, she won't win, I said, looking him in the eye. And even if she tries, let her stand in front of a judge and explain how she helped herself to $38,000 from a woman recovering from pneumonia. He nodded. Understood. I picked up the pen again. My hand didn't shake. The new will listed Joan as executor. It split the remaining estate between her and a scholarship fund for women over 50 returning to school. George always said, I should have gone back for a master's. Now someone else would. Madison's name was nowhere on the page. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. She made her choice. Now I was making mine. Next came the fraud reports. Mr. Landry had already filed a complaint with the State Elder Abuse Task Force. With the forensic handwriting report in hand and the notarization from someone personally connected to Madison, the case was gaining traction. He handed me a copy of the formal claim to the bank. They'll have to investigate. But with this much documentation, they're likely to side with you and press charges if they suspect conspiracy, which they should, Joan added quietly. I met her gaze. There was no gloating in it, just steadiness. She'd stepped in when no one else had. Not because she wanted something, but because she knew what it felt like to be pushed aside by people you loved. She changed my mailing address, I said. Took the statements, hid the withdrawals. She wasn't just making mistakes. She was covering her tracks. And she did it with confidence, Landry added. Because you never said no before. I swallowed. That part hurt. Because it was true. She used to cry when I left for work, I said quietly. Madison. When she was little, I gave up my career, so I could be there. I thought if I gave enough, she'd never feel abandoned. Joan reached for my hand. You were always there. She just stopped saying it. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the moment pass. Then I opened them and asked, Is everything filed? Yes, Landry said. As of today, she has no legal authority. The fraud reports are initiated. I've also drafted a cease and desist if she tries to use the old POA again. Good. I stood, collected the papers, the copies, the affidavit, the new will, all zipped into a neat blue folder. This time, I wasn't stashing it in a drawer. This one was going in the safe, and Joan had a duplicate. Elaine, Landry said, standing with me. I don't say this often, but I'm proud of you. I almost laughed. Took me long enough. Joan smiled softly. You did what you always do. You protected the house, just not the way anyone expected. We stepped out into the late afternoon light, and for the first time in weeks, the air didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. I glanced up at the sky. It had that crisp blue tint of early fall. The kind George used to love. Said it made the world feel honest again. I turned to Joan. She doesn't know what's coming. No, she said, but she's about to. I set the table just like she liked it. White plates with the blue trim, wine glasses, even though I knew she'd drink Lacro. The linen napkins she gave me 2 Christmases ago, back when she still pretended gifts meant something. Joan stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes tracking every motion. Are you sure you want to do this? I'm not doing it for her, I said. I'm doing it for the tape. The recorder sat beneath a folded dish towel near the centerpiece, fully charged, armed, hidden in plain sight. I'd practiced turning it on with one hand, just in case my nerves got the best of me. I hadn't spoken to Madison in 10 days. No texts, no calls, just one carefully worded invitation. Lunch on Sunday. I'd like to talk, just us, she responded in under 2 minutes. Of course, Mama Two Hearts has been missing you. I nearly threw up reading it. When she arrived, she wore soft pink lipstick and that sweater she always used when she wanted to look earnest. Her smile was the same one she used in bank lobbies and job interviews. Fake warmth, polished charm. Hi, Mom, she beamed, stepping in for a hug. I let her. For a moment, I almost believed it. She walked around the apartment like it was hers already. Looks so good in here. You cleaned the fireplace, huh? I nodded. I've had time. We sat. I poured her a glass of sparkling water. The moment her glass clinked against the coaster, I slid my hand beneath the towel.
Click.
So, she started, folding her napkin just so. Are you okay? You've been quiet lately. I've had a lot on my mind. She tilted her head, all practiced concern. Is this about the accounts again? Because, Mom, seriously, I told you I only touched them to make things easier. You weren't well. Someone had to help. Right, I said, keeping my tone neutral. And how long did you manage them? Oh, not long. Just a few months. 6 maybe. I only did what we agreed to. I nodded slowly. So, when exactly did we agree? She waved her hand. You don't remember that day after your hospital stay? You were half asleep when we signed everything. Honestly, it was just easier to put everything in my name to keep things running. You were so exhausted. There it was.
The lie.
Casual, practiced, slipped between sips of Perrier. I leaned forward. You signed the forms. Her eyes didn't even blink. Yeah, you had me take care of it. I brought them in, got it notarized, and everything. It was a huge hassle, honestly. I mean, that's love, right? I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because the recorder was still rolling. So, you signed for me? I asked carefully. No, I mean, I signed as me, but I brought your signature, too. Remember? You signed it in bed. That last part came too fast. Defensive. Sloppy. Must have been hard, I said. She leaned back in her chair, finally sipping her drink. What's hard is doing all this alone. Mom, you have no idea how much pressure I'm under. Planning the move, trying to figure out how to transition things smoothly without stressing you out. I raised an eyebrow. Transition. She smiled again, this time with teeth. Well, I mean, you did say you wanted us to start settling in soon. Alec and I have been prepping the nursery, and with your mobility getting harder. She caught herself, froze. That was the misstep. I'd never said anything about settling in, never given a timeline, never discussed mobility. The lie was hers, built on a story she thought I'd be too soft to unravel. But now it was all on tape. I reached for the dish towel, flipped it casually, and hit stop. Madison didn't even notice. We ate in awkward silence after that. I let her chatter on about her pregnancy apps and low-sodium diets, but I wasn't really listening anymore because I had what I needed. After dessert, as she packed up leftovers like they were hers to claim, she leaned in. Thanks for being cool about everything. I know this isn't easy for you. I smiled. You're right. It's not. She kissed my cheek, oblivious. I watched her walk down the driveway with confidence she hadn't earned. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was ready to hand her the consequences. The sun hadn't moved much, but everything felt different. I stood just inside the front door, envelope in hand, watching Madison walk down the driveway like she just won something. She didn't know the war had ended, and not in her favor. Wait, I called out. She turned, already halfway to her car. What's up? I stepped out onto the porch, slow and steady. The breeze brushed past us like it knew something was coming. She met me at the bottom of the steps, face still glowing with the smug self-assurance only people who've never been held accountable can wear. I handed her the envelope. What's this? She asked, eyebrows raised. Read it when you get home. She laughed nervously. You're being dramatic, Mom. Read it, I repeated. Then don't come back. Her smile faltered. Excuse me? I didn't flinch. You heard me. You made your choice. Now I've made mine. She glanced down at the envelope again like it might bite. What is this? Inside, she'd find a printed copy of the forensic handwriting analysis confirming the power of attorney's signature wasn't mine, the bank fraud report with each unauthorized withdrawal highlighted in yellow, a copy of the new will with no mention of her, a letter from Mr. Landry formally notifying her that all legal access had been revoked, and at the top, a typed transcript of our lunch conversation attached to a USB drive with the recording itself. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to threaten. I just handed her the truth. She opened the flap, skimmed the top page, and her face drained in slow motion. "Mom," she started, tone shifting instantly. Less smug, more breathless. "Wait, I know everything," I said, voice steady. "Every dollar, every signature, every time you lied and said you didn't have enough gas to visit while you were siphoning money out of my accounts for prenatal yoga and throw pillows." It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. And worse, you didn't think I'd ever ask. She stepped closer. "You were vulnerable. I didn't know what else to do." "You knew exactly what you were doing," I snapped. "You knew I wouldn't question you, and that's why you did it." She went quiet. Not guilty. Calculating. I could see it. The wheels turning, trying to find the angle. The next manipulation. "It's not too late," she tried. "We can just undo it. I'll move the money back. We don't have to get lawyers involved." I laughed, a sound I didn't recognize coming from myself. "Madison," I said softly, "we are so far past lawyers. Investigators are already involved. You'll be contacted by law enforcement. That forged signature, that's a felony." Her mouth opened, closed. She looked like a child again, but not in the way that pulls your heart. In the way that reminds you how much damage a self-centered child can do in an adult body. "You're seriously doing this?" she asked. "After everything I've done for you?" That did it. I stepped forward, eyes locked on hers. "You did nothing for me. You did everything to me. I'm your daughter. You loved my money more than you loved me." She flinched, but not from hurt, from exposure. I stepped back up the porch. "Don't call. Don't come by. If you speak to anyone on my behalf again, I'll press charges faster than you can say inheritance."
She didn't respond.
She just stood there, the envelope shaking in her hands, face caught between rage and panic. Then finally, she walked away. I watched her drive off, tires crunching gravel like it meant something. And when I went back inside, I locked the door, not out of fear, but out of finality. The conference room smelled like stale coffee and forgotten tension. Fluorescent lights hummed above, casting everything in the flat kind of brightness that makes secrets impossible to hide. Joan sat beside me, quiet but firm, a second folder of documents in her lap identical to mine. Across from us, Detective Prieto flipped through page after page. He didn't ask questions right away, just read, highlighted, made small marks in the margins. And the longer he read, the more his face changed from curious to concerned to something colder. "Let me get this straight," he finally said, voice steady. "Your daughter used a forged power of attorney confirmed by a certified handwriting expert to drain over $38,000 from your retirement and checking accounts, and she's on tape admitting she signed for you." I nodded. "Yes," he tapped the transcript. "And she never had your consent." "Never," I said. He looked to Joan. "And you've recently been named her new legal representative?" Joan nodded. "As of last week, everything's filed with her attorney." Prieto leaned back, exhaling. "You did everything right." I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath until he said it. He reached for a manila envelope with a USB inside. "The one with the lunch recording. We'll have a tech team review this. But if it matches the transcript and you're confident that's her voice." "It is," I said. He nodded slowly. "This qualifies as financial elder abuse under state law, forgery, misuse of fiduciary responsibility, fraud. Depending on how far this went, she could be looking at multiple charges." I swallowed. The words didn't land with satisfaction. "Not yet. Only wait." "What happens now?" I asked. "We open a formal investigation," he said. "We'll verify the notary connection, pull the bank surveillance if possible, get statements from the notary and the financial institutions involved. If everything lines up, we'll move forward with charges." Joan leaned in. "How long does that take?" "Sometimes weeks," he said. "Sometimes less if the paperwork is this airtight." I reached for my copy of the analysis, the one that stated plainly, "Signature is inconsistent with known writing samples and exhibits signs of tracing." That sentence had replayed in my head like a heartbeat. "She thought I'd never notice," I said. "She counted on that," Prieto replied. He pulled a notepad from his breast pocket and scribbled down contact information. You've done more than most victims ever manage. You kept records. You got legal counsel. You didn't wait until it was too late. I sat with that because it almost had been too late. If I hadn't gotten sick, if I hadn't seen that video from Joan, if I'd waited one more month, one more withdrawal, she would have taken everything. I thought being a good mother meant trusting her, I said quietly. Prieto didn't speak for a moment. Then he said something I'll never forget. Being a good mother doesn't mean being a good victim. Joan reached for my hand. I held on tight. We left the station an hour later. The report was filed. The audio submitted. Signature analysis sealed into evidence. It was no longer just my word against hers. Now it was law. 2 weeks later, Joan got the call while we were pruning roses. She held the phone away from her ear and mouthed, "It's him." I stopped moving. Just listened. When she hung up, she didn't speak right away. Just sat beside me on the garden bench, sunlight painting golden halos through the leaves above us. "They're moving forward," she said. "Charges are being filed. They've got enough." I didn't ask what kind. I didn't need to. The damage was already done. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not just the air, but the atmosphere. Sterile, unforgiving. No one looked at me with pity. No one looked at her with kindness. That was new. Madison sat 2 rows ahead at the defendant's table, hair neatly pinned, jacket too bright for the room. She looked tired, worn in the way people do when the world no longer bends in their direction. She didn't glance back once. I sat between Joan and Mr. Landry, holding a folded tissue I hadn't needed yet. He whispered, "We're here to speak truth, not win a show. Just be honest." That I could do. I'd spent a lifetime being honest, just not always out loud. When they called my name, I stood slowly, deliberately. No dramatics, no tears, just clarity. I walked to the front and took the oath. My hand didn't tremble. My voice didn't crack. I told the court everything. The forged signature. The bank withdrawals. The lies Madison told when I was still coughing through pneumonia. How she changed my address. How she stole access, then called it love. And how I almost let her. She used my trust like a tool. I said, voice calm, even not to help me but to help herself. And when I questioned it, she told me I was confused. She called me forgetful. She made me feel like the problem. I paused, and I believed her. For months, I believed I was slipping. That maybe I had signed something and forgotten. That maybe being old meant I didn't get to ask questions anymore. I looked directly at the judge. Then I'm not confused. I'm not weak. And I'm not going to be quiet just because she's my daughter. When I stepped down, I felt taller, like I'd reclaimed inches of my spine that had been curved by guilt. Then it was Madison's turn. Her lawyer spun a story. Illness, stress, miscommunication. Claimed I had technically signed something even if I didn't remember. Said Madison only ever acted with love and urgency. When Madison took the stand, she cried. Not loud sobs, just steady tears like someone had coached her well. She said she was overwhelmed. Said she only touched the money because she thought I'd want her to have a head start. Said she would have paid it back. Eventually, she never said the word sorry, not once. Mr. Landry kept it simple. He played the recording, the one where she admitted signing, managing, planning to transition the house before I ever gave permission. The courtroom didn't flinch. The judge asked if she had proof that I'd consented to anything in writing. Her lawyer deflected, said intent shouldn't be criminalized. The judge disagreed. It didn't take long. They ruled that the power of attorney was invalid. All account access revoked. Full restitution ordered. Every dollar she took, plus interest, and pending criminal proceedings were referred to the state attorney. And then the part one didn't expect, a supervision order. Madison would be placed under financial monitoring. She couldn't access credit lines, sign documents on behalf of another person, or hold any fiduciary position until cleared by the court. Her bank accounts were to be frozen for review. She'd taken my trust, and now the law had taken hers. Afterward, she didn't come near me, didn't look at me as she walked past, but I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see my daughter. I saw a woman who thought love was entitlement, who believed kindness meant silence, who assumed that blood meant immunity. She was wrong.